This thing. Okay, Solitario. Why don't you speak a little bit to this one?
Well, I guess the Zinc project with Vittoria and Tim, that seems to be on track to come out with a, sounded like pre-feasibility study this year.
Yeah, maybe PEA. Did you say pre-feasibility or PEA? I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe PEA.
Well, it doesn't make that much of a difference. Whatever it is, if it comes out to be a large number and they have 30% of it carried, it's
But unfortunately, that's not. I mean, I feel like that's similar to what we were told last year. Similar level of confidence, and that did not come to pass. So we could easily, be talking to them next year in New York, and still waiting for EA, still waiting for some impetus for, an offer to presumably be made to buy out their interest in the project.
But just to be clear, they're not saying that, right? So he's not. He hasn't. I mean, he suggested that might be a driver, but he says, look, if this thing is in production in 2017, which is kind of the timeline, then we'll be making 30% of a valuable mine. That the only reason they would be putting this in production is because they can make money.
I don't think he said 2017. I think it was 2016 or maybe even sooner.
Okay, well, whatever. I'm saying a few years down the road. So he's not out promoting this as like, my God, this is, clearly it's worth, if it works out, several dollars per share, but how does that get monetized? I mean, if it's waiting years and,
From our perspective, I'm saying, I guess we'd like to see it be monetized if, no other reason that helps fund the development of their other asset in Nevada, so I'm blanking on the name of the deposit.
Mount Hamilton.
Mount Hamilton, right? So
I'll talk about Mount Hamilton, I guess. I mean, so there, there was one reason I liked the deposit, but it wasn't the expansion. And he spent quite a bit of time talking about potential for expansion, and that he thinks that this could be over 1 million ounces of mined, in terms of how much will come out of the ground at this deposit and potential growth and size and things like that. There's gold on the leach pad. There's gold outside of the current pit or the existing pits. There's gold outside of the current conceptual pit, or I guess it's not conceptual because feasibility, but the current pit outline. There's potentially gold at other places nearby. I mean, I still get back to, if you look at the deposit, it holds together pretty darn well. So the main deposit, the Centennial or whatever deposit that is the subject of their feasibility work, should be a kind of a no-brainer to mine. And then he had mentioned also that the feasibility is pretty conservative, and there could be some upside on both capital and operating costs, as well as perhaps on grade. And so, already looks pretty decent now. I think the company's probably trading at half of the NPV of the project. But I guess the nice thing is that they have a pretty strong commitment to keep their shares very tight. And so if they do any equity, that's going to be pretty small, and they want to fund the development through debt or some other creative financing. And we've talked to them. I think even last year we talked to them about a potential royalty stream. And at the time, I don't think they didn't really indicate that much about it. But when he talked this time, he's like, "Yeah, we've talked. We're definitely talking, and may do a deal on a stream type deal very shortly, or perhaps, right?" It seemed much more. So I don't know if. I don't want to say that we put any ideas into their heads, but I'm sure they talked to other people as well. But it probably helped that we felt we as
part of it's just the market. If they were trading at $3, they'd probably be issuing equity, right? So
maybe, but I think they've been really tight. They have 30-something million shares out. So obviously they've been around for a while. This is a prospect generator model as well, and so it's they clearly have a couple assets here and maybe a couple more further in the back burner that could turn out to be something. But I mean, this Mount Hamilton, I like it quite a bit. We talked a little bit about it as well, this whole approach that they're not going to use trucks for transport. They're going to actually use like ore chutes and conveyors to bring the ore down off the mountain to they have a two-stage crushing, so they crush it up top and then they crush it again and put it on the leach pad at the base of the mountain. And in fact, just the gravity bringing the ore down the mountain will generate electricity for the primary crusher, so their electrical needs might be reduced. So who knows? Maybe they'll get a green technology stamp on this project for electricity savings or whatever, energy savings. But I thought that in looking at all the different deposits in Nevada, there's quite a few that are like these million-ounce, maybe some bigger, whatever. Oxidized gold, heap leach type operations. This is one of the better. If you look at the resource envelope and the grades within the pit, one of the nicer ones. I mean, many of these deposits are not, or one of these projects are not. One pit has 500,000 ounces or whatever in it. Even 500,000 ounces might be spread around a bunch of places. Here, the main thing, they got 500,000 ounces there. Now, maybe you have a couple hundred here and there from other parts of the project nearby. But the main thing that they've done their feasibility is on, they're getting all the gold from one place. It's going to go down a chute, after it's being crushed one place, and secondary crushing, put on the heap leach pad, boom, $500-$600 an ounce gold. I mean, I feel pretty, thinking about that and what the costs are and what the process is, I could believe $500 or $600 on cash costs for that. Some of these other things that get all complicated and whatever, massive operations and all this stuff, I have a hard time believing that, in best case scenario, maybe you get $500 or $600, but you don't want the ideal to be, what you're going on. You want to be a realistic case, and I think they built a realistic case for, producing that's going to be a profitable gold mine.
Right. So I think there's a lot of positive things that we talked about, especially in terms of not having to dilute, hopefully, further at this stage to move the project forward, to do additional drilling and development work. But I mean, a big thing for me was just, again, it's one of those kind of timelines that, tends to stretch itself out a little longer. I think in this case, because, he wants to do more drilling and, bring the deposit, closer to, I think his target was, 750 to 1 million ounces.
We went back and forth. Yeah.
No, a lot of the time he said is just going to be for permitting, so maybe it was going to overlap anyways. But it seems to me like it's kind of been brought forward, or brought back maybe another year from what was the expectations of a few years ago. That could have ended up being a good thing in the long run, but you're going to have some patience as an investor, I think. There's just no real short-term impetuses. So.
Well, I think the short-term impetus is if they get financing. I mean, look, let's say, I don't know how much the money might be or whatever, but and he's clearly said that it would be bridge. It wouldn't be the full amount to fund the whole thing, and just as a commitment, type of thing, they want to put a little bit of equity. So right now is obviously not the best market for that. But I mean, look, the bridge finance, let's say they raise $20 million, and basically it's a minor deal. I mean, their whole market cap is about 30 something. I mean,
well, I don't think it's going to be 20 million. My impression was it'd be under 10 million.
Okay, maybe, I don't know. I mean, I thought that they might do a couple of deals.
I don't think it's going to be a major. I guess it depends on who the institution is and what type of deal.
Right.
The structure is.
Yeah, I mean, until you've got a done deal, you're not really, have any certainty. But he felt pretty confident that having talked to enough people now that they're going to have something. But okay, so that's one side of it. But yeah, okay, you make a good point about maybe it's a year further out, but that was from when we talked about years ago. So in some ways, it's not like they constantly revise the timeline. One thing I did not get, and I think this is maybe where you get your sense, is that he didn't seem like he had an urgency to put this into production. And I'd want to see, ideally, I'd want to see a lot of urgency and say, hey, we're fast-tracking to get this thing done as fast as possible. I think he'd be perfectly fine spending another year drilling, but, to the point of the permitting, the permitting is going to be another year or so, why not do some more drilling and potentially expand the deposit? especially since he mentioned a couple of options might be to go back into the old pits and source material from there earlier. That could actually cause because you got that point, right? So it could actually be in production earlier. So they could do more exploration and find, like, if the leach pad could be reprocessed and then get that permitted quickly, or if the old pits have material that they could bring, no stripping, and they could immediately start mining that. So it may be like, okay, the whole thing is going further back, but that could bring it forward. So it's maybe the same timeline. I guess one thing to his credit, he wasn't making a very strong promise about it, and maybe
inconsistency about it. I mean, last time we spoke with them, there was also a very strong, kind of curiosity to see, what lies beyond the current resource. So
yeah,
I didn't have any expectations for, this is going to be fast-tracked into production. It seems like maybe it's more of a curiosity, like, wouldn't this be nice if this was a 1 million ounce deposit, as opposed to, maybe we should, fast-track it and just become a producer and then see what's there. But I don't know if those are actually at odds with one another, or it's just being very conservative about the timeline. And not wanting.
Well, I don't. Yeah, it could be conservative about timeline. It could be conservative timeline, but what about having flexibility, right? So, I mean, he had mentioned amending the permits and things like that. Could it could you have to change your plans around. But then also, if they do this additional drilling, it could be worthwhile to go through that phase because it could bring more value to the to the economics of it earlier in the mine life. And of course, that's the earlier you can recover and get cash flow, the more valuable the project is.
One thing we know for certain is it's cheap. So if either one of Mount Hamilton or works out, it's cheap.
Bangura? Yeah.
What did I say?
I don't know. I think it cut off.
Yeah. Bangura. Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's obviously now we don't personally own this now, but the price is pretty ridiculously low. So definitely, I would, if I was buying something, this would be one on the list. If you didn't have mostly everything bought at this point, and not as much cash on the side as I'd like, but okay.